100 grand Ross with the Rock never stops. I was requested to do a video on the Minnesota Timberwolves and recap the trade that I had talked about from this offseason. And boy, oh boy, both teams, the Timberwolves and the New York Knicks, in the second round semifinals of the NBA playoffs in both their respective conferences. It's time that we revisited this because I was right and I was wrong. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say I was wrong, but I would say that there were some things that I didn't quite consider. I didn't foresee. I didn't have the foresight to really see how things might play out that adds some context to what I might have talked about. So I'm going to dive into that in this video. If you enjoy it, smash the like button for me. I definitely appreciate it. This is an interactive live, so you get an opportunity to chat with me real time. I don't always do these videos at the set time, so you may catch me, you may not. But if you smash the like button, it'll come through on your YouTube algorithm for you to know when I'm going live again. All that's to say, smash the like button, hit subscribe, and the bell for notifications. I appreciate y'all. Let's dive into this. The New York Knicks made an all-in trade for Karl Anthony Towns this past offseason in 2024, the summer of 2024. And it wasn't surprising. There was a connection between the agent or previous NBA agent that's now front office exec for the New York Knicks and Karl Anthony Towns. There was the team that the Knicks were constructing specifically to be able to attack the Boston Celtics, building out a team around Jalen Brunson to be able to win a championship. And they saw the impending free agency of Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo as potential cap situations. And when I say cap situations, I mean that they were a potential it could be an opportunity where you might lose valuable players for less than their value, which would undermine going all in on Jalen Brunson to win a championship, or they could potentially upsell and try to get somebody that has more value, but is going to cost them a lot more and really lock them into this roster permanently, at least for the next 3-4 years, which is essentially Jalen Brunson's window to win a championship. And so when you look at that move by the Knicks, it was, you know what? It's rare that you get these moments. It's rare that you have a guy that you could say, we can go all in on this guy. Like we can build around him and legitimately believe we have an opportunity to win an NBA championship. That's rare. It's really rare. And so they went for it. They went for it. Karl Anthony Towns, bringing him in. He has some chemistry with Tom Thibodeau. I don't know if it's the best chemistry because Thibs is often frustrated with his lack of defense and decision making, but there's some things that I did not foresee. There's some things that I did not know was going to play out the way it has. And I'm going to get into that. But first, let me talk about the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves, they were looking at Karl Anthony Towns' bloated contract, and they were looking at the timeline of Anthony Edwards. And they began to see the young talent on this team, whether it was Naz Reid, Jalen McDaniels, guys like that they wanted to make sure that they could retain. They recognized that Karl Anthony Towns, especially because they're in a smaller market, was really going to constrict their ability to make roster moves. And considering that Anthony Edwards is 23 years old, 24 years old, mad young, right? They didn't want to constrict their ability to have flexibility to build around him for the foreseeable future. Because what I always tell you, I say it consistently, check my channel, hold those receipts. I consistently tell you, every small market team, just about, you have a 7-year window with a superstar player. From the moment you draft them, from the moment you get them, you have a 7-year window. You have your 4 years under a rookie deal. And then you have the extension. And you generally give them an extension. I think now they extended it to where you can give an extension for 5 years max. That's if they're like all-star or all NBA. And you can give them more money than anyone else. But none of that really matters because if you haven't proven that you can win, if you haven't proven that you can win, and I mean getting to the NBA finals, at least your conference finals, at least bare minimum, and consistently in the playoffs, if you haven't proven to them that you can do that, they are more than likely gone. When they hit unrestricted free agency, they're gone. Now, here's the thing, even with the 5 year deal, usually the fifth year is a player option. It's an opt out, which 99.999% of players are going to utilize. Anthony Edwards is going to utilize his opt out in that fifth year of his extension. And the Minnesota Timberwolves know that. And knowing that they're already in the first year of his extended contract, they really only have a window of maybe the next 3 years, this season and 3 more years, to have a deep run in the playoffs. And I mean conference finals, NBA finals, or they're likely going to lose them. So when they're looking at Karl Anthony Towns' contract, they're looking at it to say, I don't know if this guy gives us the best opportunity to win with our guy, especially when you're considering the fact that he was unplayable against the Denver Nuggets. Even though they were successful, there were large stretches of that game. He was unplayable. Literally, you watch the game, go back in the film. They had to take him out the game, not just for offensive, defensive substitutions, but they had to take him out of the game, off the court, because of his decision making, lack of leadership, and just his overall lack of defense. And so when I saw this trade initially take place, I said, Minnesota won. Minnesota won. Now, look, Julius Randle has his attitude, energy issues, right? He's getting mad at the fans, getting mad. It is what it is. And I saw that in New York, and I said, well, but he's already proven he could be an all NBA player there. He's already proven he could be a multiple time All-Star there. And so when you look at the value going back and forth, transitioning, I said, well, who's more than likely to fit? Now, here's where I got it wrong. I'm going to be 100% honest with y'all. Some of y'all may not want to hear this. I got it wrong. And here's why. I underestimated the core of the New York Knicks and their impact on Karl Anthony Towns. What they essentially did, this core of Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart. I know it may sound weird to say they're a core because they've kind of just only been together for the last year and a half. And yet, that core, their chemistry, their continuity, how they've gelled, their overall high level of basketball IQ. Remember, Mikal Bridges and Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart already won NCAA championships at Villanova. So they have incredible chemistry. They've gelled. They trust each other. They know each other. They're high leverage players. Mikal Bridges already been in the NBA Finals. Jalen Brunson, champion in high school, college. He looks like he's headed that direction as a pro in the NBA. Their impact on Karl Anthony Towns has been such that they have been able to circumvent all of the flaws of Karl Anthony Towns and making up for it. So much so that they aren't necessarily exacerbated anymore. You're not going to Karl Anthony Towns down the crunch time of a game. You're not asking him to make high leverage reads or decisions. You're not going to him when all the chips are on the line. You know who you're going to? Jalen Brunson, who was voted Mr. Clutch. I don't necessarily think he was as clutch as people playing it out to be, but it's a facetious award. It is what it is. But you can't deny that in high leverage moments, you trust that guy. You trust that guy. I would trust him. I would trust him. Straight up. But it's to say that you no longer have to put that pressure on Karl Anthony Towns. You no longer have to put the pressure on him to be a leader. That's what you got, Jalen Brunson. That's what you got, Josh Hart. That's what you got, Mikal Bridges. Those guys got it. They got it. And even when you need shot creation, you don't necessarily need Karl Anthony Towns to be your primary shot creator. A lot of his offense, if we are honest, I'm not going to say is a luxury, but it is something that puts them over the top. It's something that makes them extremely good. It gives them that ceiling, and that's what they brought him in for. The scoring between Brunson, Bridges, and OG Anunoby. We've already seen those guys can get you 20 plus in any game, even in the playoffs. That's how good they are. But they needed balance on the court so that they have some sort of interior play and the ability to open up the court, especially from the 3-point line. And so bringing in Karl Anthony Towns made a lot of sense. But even then, you still had Mitchell Robinson. He was coming off of an injury, but it's to say you still got those guys. Now, I thought Karl Anthony Towns was going to fold under the pressure. I thought the lights were going to get too big. I thought when the Knicks needed him the most, he was going to fall short. And the reality is, I was also right. He has. Big leverage games. He has made the wrong decisions, gotten into foul trouble, disappeared, right? Been all over the place, not in the best ways, as much as he's had really strong performances, even to some great performances, especially in the Pistons series. He's had this helter-skelter, Jekyll and Hyde type of performance from game to game, but it hasn't mattered as much because of the insulation on that team. And when I say it hasn't mattered, it's to say that they've been able to get by despite it. They don't need to harp on it. They know what he is. And they've been able to get extremely far despite it. Going to the Timberwolves. I did not foresee it taking this long for Julius Randle to gel and to buy in to the Minnesota Timberwolves in this roster. I did a video on it when he was struggling early in the season because, of course, New York Knicks fans came for me and they was like, man, I thought you said we lost the trade. Look at it, y'all out here struggling, Minnesota struggling, and the Knicks is off to a roll. It was true. But I had to be real with y'all. What I saw was somebody who was shell-shocked. I saw Julius Randle who was shell-shocked. He was like, I didn't imagine I was going to get traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves. I didn't imagine I was going to be in the Big Apple one day. Right? I got my family, I got my kids, I'm settled. And all of a sudden, I'm moving across the country to Minnesota. Right? Land of 1,000 lakes. Literally, there's lakes everywhere if you ever flown over Minnesota. Totally different than the Big Apple. Right? Concrete jungle. City that never sleeps. Oh, Minnesota sleeps, especially in the winter. All that's to say is it was a shock for him. And it took him a while to go from being the big fish in the Big Apple to the second fish, maybe the third fish at times, in a bunch of ponds and a bunch of lakes. Yeah, Timberwolves Knicks finals matchup would be crazy. Would be crazy. Searching for Jerry Garcia. Great point, man. I was actually thinking about that. Could both these teams actually legitimately get to the NBA finals? And I could see it. This version of Julius Randle, yes. But I think Denver just looks different right now. Denver looks different. I know OKC is still in the mix. I would give Minnesota a greater chance against Oklahoma City than I would the Denver Nuggets. But that's something to think about later. Because the reality is it's going to be a tough knockdown, drag out, probably 6-7 game series in the Western Conference Finals no matter what. And the Knicks ain't done. The Knicks ain't done. Even though they up on Boston 2-1, they lose in New York. Tatum finally shows up. And they ain't out. They ain't done yet because let them lose again in New York. Right? There's a lot of pressure in this game 4. I don't trust the Knicks to close out this series with Boston, to be honest. I don't know necessarily either. I think what it will take is They will have to be consistent across the board. They will have to really show up and put their foot on Boston's neck. If they win game 4, I'm gonna be honest, this series may tilt on game 4. If they win game 4, the New York Knicks probably going to the Eastern Conference Finals for sure. And they're looking at an NBA Finals potentially. If they lose game 4, I think Boston wins the series. I think they regain control. They go into Boston confidently. They win in Boston. Then in a game 6, it's probably going to be a must win for New York at that point to try to tie the series at 3-3. And then it's a game 7 in Boston. Now, it's hard to bet against Jalen Brunson, but let's be clear, man, Drew Holiday has been doing a hell of a job on Brunson. And I figured he would. I figured he would. He knows all the tricks of the trade. He's got a low base, great lateral movement, anticipation, long arms, 6'4" and a half, physical, but he's able to play physical without fouling. So it's a really hard matchup for Jalen Brunson. But we'll see. All this to say is that when you look at this trade, both teams won. Both teams are dealing with the talent that they got back. Julius Randle can be a malcontent. Let's just be real. He can also be a guy that's a bit self-absorbed. He doesn't always stay locked in to what the team is trying to do. And yet, let's be clear. I'm not a Julius Randle hater. Karl Anthony Towns, you can call me a hater. All right, you can call me a hater. I haven't been a fan of his since early in his career. I was like, he ain't it. And how he moves is weird. And it's just his voice and then his how the things he said. It's just weird. It's just weird. So you can call me a Karl Anthony Towns hater. But Julius Randle, I've been a fan of his since he came out of high school. I thought he was a beast in that draft with Wiggins and Gordon and Embiid and all them. He's an extremely talented player. Extremely talented player. I liked him with the Lakers. I liked him in New Orleans. I saw him on the Knicks. But then I think that even the Knicks were shocked. He looked so good in New York. And then they ended up having to focus on him more. And then he kind of got uh, overrated. And then he got asked to do too much, and you realize he can't necessarily do that much. All this to say is that both teams ended up with the talent that they requested. Minnesota, what they really wanted was cap flexibility. That was really what Minnesota wanted. If we keep it a band, what Minnesota wanted was cap flexibility. Julius Randle is a great talent. He is a great talent. And I mean, he is a great second fiddle go-to guy on the interior, especially in a league where you don't have a lot of power forwards. You don't have dominant power forwards across the board. Like people don't realize, like back in the day, when you had Shaq, Robinson, Mourning, when you had Olajuwon, you had Ewing. They also had many times really good. I'm not gonna call them all-time great, but really good power forwards next to him. Robert Ory, Anthony Mason, even though he played more three at times, but Anthony Mason or Charles, what's I forget his last name for the Knicks, PJ Brown. You had guys like Horace Grant, right? You had like guys all-star level, 6'10", athletic, two-way defensive, could knock down a jump shot while also defending the rim, were physical. I mean, talk about monster front lines. Like it's starting to come back. Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley, right? Giannis, Brook Lopez, or Giannis and Bobby Portis, right? You kind of see now it's starting to become in vogue again. Julius Randle, Rudy Gobert. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Shit, I forgot my point. I forgot my point. Shit. Yeah, they going big now. Um, But when I look at this trade, when I look at the trade in general, they got the talents that they got. They got cap flexibility in Minnesota, which they needed. Julius Randle is going to be an unrestricted free agent. They might extend him and keep him at that around 30 million because he had a really rough first half of the season. But it's to say that now they have the flexibility to add more pieces, right? If you can't retain Julius Randle, then you do a sign and trade. You sign him for the money he's asking for, what another team is willing to offer, and you take back talent. Now, this still helps you out because you still have those contracts to work with in the future, and you're not locked into Karl Anthony Towns 50 to 60 million. Tim Connolly is a genius. It was a great move. It was a great move. And I know a lot of the New York fans got upset when I said that Minnesota won the trade. But who they also got was Dante DiVincenzo. Dante mother freaking DiVincenzo. The man who went ape crazy for the New York Knicks last year in the playoffs from three, who won a championship with Villanova, right? Who's been a high leverage player, who's been a winner, right? He was there with Milwaukee when they had that run to a championship. You know what I'm saying? Like he's been on winning teams. He knows what it takes to win. He's a two-way guy. He's a very confident shooter who can put the ball on the floor. He's a versatile defender who plays physical and tough, moves his feet, gets out in transition, has sneaky athleticism. You know, he's extremely skilled and he's reliable in the playoffs. You can trust him with the ball in his hands in the playoffs. That's very few guys you can say that about in high leverage moments. That's why I said Minnesota won. Not necessarily because of the Karl Anthony Towns and Julius Randle equaling one another out, but it was the Dante DiVincenzo move and the cap flexibility. Because the tough situation for the New York Knicks is they're locked in. They're locked in. They are locked in. Those contracts, nobody will. I mean, Mikal Bridges is movable. OG Anunoby has been balling out. I would say that contract is movable. But for the most part, it's like you're not going to get somebody of equal value back, more than likely. Not young, not in their prime, producing at a high rate that fit Tom Thibodeau as a two-way player, plays tough, plays physical, can also create their own shot because Thibs is not the best offensive scheme coach, right? So they're pretty much locked in, especially with Karl Anthony Towns' contract. They're in the second apron. They're going to be paying tax out the ass for the next 3-4 years. It is what it is. And that's why I thought Minnesota won the trade. But the reality is, it might just be equal. It might just be equal because the New York Knicks have figured out how to hedge all of Karl Anthony Towns' weaknesses, and they've been able to figure out how to win despite those weaknesses at a high level. Not just win in the regular season, but win in the playoffs, win must-win games. All right, and like I said before, I can't wait to see Game 4 between Boston and New York in New York because it will be a must-win game for the New York Knicks. I already called it. If they lose Game 4, they probably lose the series. I'm betting on them losing the series. If they win Game 4, they're in the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, I'm not going to give it to them against the Pacers or the Cavs because the reality is the Cavs at full strength are a monster. The Pacers beat a Cavs team twice in Cleveland without the defensive player of the year, Evan Mobley, without one of the best floor generals, distributing, facilitating guards out there in Darius Garland, right? So it made a huge difference. And even then, they had to come back, right, and squeak it out. Donovan Mitchell was an absolute monster. And now you see the impact when they bring their guys back and they're at full strength. So I'm not necessarily going to call it and be like, oh, it's New York Knicks. If they win this series, they're in the NBA Finals. I'm not going to say that at all. But this is an interactive chat, so please feel free to put your comments or your thoughts in the chat, and I'll definitely try to get to it. If you want me to talk a little bit more at length about a topic, shoot me a super chat. We'll definitely chop it up. Let me see. Knicks fans were saying they won the trade at the beginning of the season. Yeah, aged like milk. Knicks couldn't beat any good teams all season. Boston will definitely win the series. I could see it. We took all their grit. Dante does so much even when his shot isn't dropping from three. That's something that people don't really realize how valuable it is. And that's what really makes a guy a playoff guy. This is for all teams in general. Playoff guys are not relegated to how well their shot is dropping. And playoff guys are not necessarily impacted to a high degree by the pressure of the playoffs. They're not. You look at Buddy Hield, even if he has a terrible shooting game, you can give him the ball on the last second shot and he will shoot that ball as if he's 10 for 10. That's how much confidence he has in his game. I remember, like, I used to, I'm a little bit older than I might look, and I've hooped for a long time. I put in a lot of work. Put in a lot of work. I mean, able to travel, shit like that. It's no like gassing myself or anything like that. I'm just saying I understand what it means to put a lot of work into your game. I understand the 10,000 hours, 10,000 reps, to have that type of confidence in your shot. And there was times, plenty of times, um, where you're getting into that zone. The zone everybody talks about where the basket looks like it's 10 feet wide. And if you feel like you can get it off your fingertips and just in the air, it's going in. But here's the thing, even on your bad shooting nights, when you miss and you've put in a lot of work in your game, you kind of feel like, did somebody move the rim? Because that shot was supposed to go in, right? What extra factor took place around me that caused that shot to not go in? Because I know how much work I put into my shot. Buddy Hield is the type of talent. He don't even think twice when he misses. He has no consideration if it was something that he did. He's just sitting there like, okay, well, maybe it was just a random fluke. Maybe there was a breeze that came in. You know what I mean? That's what makes him a playoff level guy. Pressure doesn't get to him when it comes to his game. Dante DiVincenzo is one of those dudes. That's why he's so valuable. And not just his game when it comes to shooting. He will falter a little bit with his shooting because his shot was something that he's had to develop later in his career. Buddy Hield came in hot. All this to say is Dante still knows he can play great defense. Dante still knows he can rebound, get deflections, get steals. He knows he can make good passes and good reads, make good decisions, move off the ball, finish in transition. He knows he can attack straight line drives and even do some playmaking. Right? He has an extreme level of confidence in all these other components of his game that allows him to perform in the playoffs. So even if he's not having a good shooting game, he's still not just playable but reliable to help you to win. These Minnesota Timberwolves are almost, I would say, in the same position as the New York Knicks. Almost in the same position. And here's the scary thing. We just barely saw Anthony Edwards be Anthony Edwards in this game against the Golden State Warriors. This is probably the first time I want to say I can remember from these playoffs that Anthony Edwards. Well, no, he had some games against the Lakers, but I'll say definitely in the series against the Warriors where he just looked like that dude. Mark Jackson used to have this saying. He said, "Mama, there goes that man, that guy, him." You see, Anthony Edwards has always had that confidence, always had that swag, but now he's playing like it. His shot is dropping. Not just that, his co-star showed up. Julius Randle showed up, balled out. It was basically Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards versus Jonathan Kuminga and Jimmy Butler. That was basically it was a 2-on-2, and a bunch of throw-in guys grabbing boards and giving inbounds. You know what I mean? Wolves' goal was not to win now. They want to build around Ant, who's only 23. Facts. How was a good trade for Knicks if they don't get to the Eastern Conference Finals or the Finals? That was the goal for them to win now, and that's very true. That's very true. But here's the thing: also, you have to consider is how they lose, how they win or lose also matters. If they go 7 games with the Boston Celtics and it's a last second shot and Tatum or Jalen Brown hits it and Brunson gets it blocked or something and can't get it off, right? They can't make the play. That's not as bad. If they lose in 6, hell yeah, that's bad. Searching for Jerry Garcia was good, man. And Edwards make me wish Mark Jackson was still calling games for real. Hey, real talk. I miss Mark Jackson. I've been watching the game for a long time. You know what I also missed was Hubie Brown. Hubie Brown. So I also used to. So I played for a long time. Played some college. Did some travel around the world playing ball. It was dope. It was dope. But my real calling was what was as a coach. I loved coaching. I loved coaching. I coached for like 15, 16 years. Coached some college, overseas, stuff like that. Hubie Brown was that dude. He was that commentator who I would listen to, and you would just absorb so much game and content. Like he would drop strategy and insight about the game of basketball in ways that you would just like, man, you would just sop it up like gravy in a biscuit. You know what I mean? Like you would just be like, oh hell yeah, let me get all that. Let me write that shit down. Grab my journal and put that down. Hubie Brown was that. I used to love listening to him. I also like Mark Jackson because he came from the perspective of a player, a high level player, but also a high level player who also kind of had that role player type feel. Like he's almost like that Jalen Brunson type, where it's like you were never the greatest athlete, the greatest player in terms of your outlook, right? You didn't have the 40-inch vertical, you weren't blowing by guys, but you honed your game so well. You were so skilled and tough and physical and confident and a leader, had so many intangibles that you were able to perform at such a high level. Mark Jackson was one of those guys that gave you insight in what it meant to explain the game from a coach's perspective, from a player's perspective, from a winner's perspective. And he wasn't clout chasing. He wasn't trying to get fans. He wasn't like, like I would say guys like Reggie Miller at times, um, Channing Frye, guys who really want to be in the media, guys who really want to be on television. And so a lot of the stuff that they're saying is to like get you to be like, oh yeah, good point, haha, something like that. It's not necessarily, oh, what's good, Joe B? What's good with you, man? Um, yeah, we are talking about somebody mentioned commentators. We miss Mark Jackson, to point out, Mama, there goes that man in the playoffs, especially when Anthony Edwards was balling out the way he was tonight. And this kind of like triggered me to do some content that someone in my chats had asked about, and they said, "Can you do a revisitation of the Timberwolves Knicks trade that you talked about last offseason?" And I did. I went at length about it, and I was right and I was wrong. I was right and I was wrong. I was right in my synopsis, but when I said Minnesota won, for all the reasons I said, I was still right, but I was wrong because New York was able to shore up all the deficiencies of Karl Anthony Towns to be able to win at a high level, in which case they won also because they got exactly what they wanted. And they're still winning at a high level. They're in the semifinals. They're up 2-1 in the semifinals of the playoffs. They are expected to win this series at this point. When you're up 2-1 and you have another game at home. But I did say they have to win game 4. If they lose game 4, I think they lose the series in 7. If they win game 4, they're going to the Eastern Conference Finals. If I had to bet, if I was a betting man, I don't bet because I just don't agree with playing with your money like that. I'm not the type of dude. I don't like to lose 25 cents. I've been to Vegas, came with $20, left with 400. Been to Vegas, dropped $25, lost it in 5 minutes in blackjack, and did not bet a single dollar more for the rest of that weekend. That's just kind of how I'm built. I hate to lose. Hate it with a passion. So you can imagine the type of competitor I am when I used to hoop. That's a segue. Let me circle it back. Let me bring it back. All that's to say is if I was a betting man, game 4, I'm expecting Jalen Brunson to have a huge game. Huge game. Huge game. I'm betting the Knicks are looking at game 4 like this is our this is the game that will decide this series. We need to win it. And in those games, Jalen Brunson gets off. I don't know how he does it. He figures it out. He gets off. And I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see Jalen Brunson get off. Now, in terms of Minnesota, well, let me just say, I don't know if that necessarily means the Knicks are going to win. Now, hear me on that. I have it like 50-50. Boston, New York for game 4. It can go either way, even if Brunson has a great game, because Boston still got Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum. They still got a championship team. They still got guys who know what it takes to win. They still have a great defense. They still have one of the best on-ball defenders, especially in the crunch time, to guard Jalen Brunson, right? This is the same Drew Holiday who locked up Devin Booker and Chris Paul in the NBA Finals to win the championship with the Bucks, right? This Drew Holiday knows what the freak he's doing, and they still got guys like uh, uh, Derek White. But if I'm Boston, I play Drew Holiday every single Jalen Brunson minute. If Brunson is in the game, Drew Holiday, you in the game. I see Brunson about to check in. Drew Holiday, get your butt up and check in. You're just gonna have to, this the playoffs, bro. It's the playoffs. Because Brunson against Drew Holiday, he was in that ass. He was in that ass. But let me say this about Minnesota. Uh, and this has been a dope chat so far. I appreciate all the comments. Um, yeah, I want to get to this leading Lions comment as well. Um, but let me just say, Minnesota right now has a lot of momentum, winning Game 3 at Chase Stadium in San Francisco. I almost want to say Oracle because I live in the Bay, and we've seen them at Oracle for so long. I even remember when the Golden State Warriors were in San Jose. They were in San Jose for like a year, I want to say. They were doing like some uh, construction on the stadium or whatnot. All I have to say is Golden State is going to have to reckon with Stephen Curry out for another game, at least another game. I think he's done. He could be done for the series. He could be done for the series. He could be. Uh, all this to say is they have to contend with the fact that Jonathan Kuminga is now their second best player. Draymond Green is no longer as necessary or impactful for the Golden State Warriors. And Steve Kerr has never been able to figure out how to maximize Kuminga's abilities. And so most of how Kuminga scores is just off of his talent. All that's to say, you combine all those different things. I question if the Golden State Warriors can pivot and put together the scheme to maximize this current rendition of the roster. Remember, he's now having to depend upon Brandon Pajemski, Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, Gui Santos. But really, Pajemski, Moody, and Kuminga. 3 guys that he has yanked in and out of his lineup all season long for the past few seasons. Things got bad there, just observing from the outside. So now all of a sudden you got to put together a scheme that they're going to be confident in. I don't know if he's given them a reason to ever be confident in anything that he puts together for this team's offense. He does not have an offense and he has not shown the ability to maximize their talent and for them to be able to play confident consistently over a span of time within his system. Jonathan Kuminga essentially just does him. You see, he sits in a corner. And then every once in a while, he'll come to the wing, and Jimmy Butler remembers, oh, yeah, I got this Jonathan Kaminga guy. I need his help. So he'll swing him the ball. Draymond Green just forgets about Kaminga a bunch of times, um, unless he's wide open. Otherwise, he's force feeding Jimmy Butler or giving the ball to Buddy Hield. Right? I watched the fourth quarter today, and there was a stretch of like 4 minutes, 3, 4 minutes, where Jonathan Kaminga didn't even touch the ball on offense. And I'm like, he's your second leading scorer. He got like 26 points. How's he not touching the ball? Draymond, why are you only giving it to Jimmy 3, 4 times in a row down the court? Right? It feels like a little underhanded hater, like Draymond still wants to be the big bro. He don't realize Jonathan Kaminga's like, man, I don't care, bro. I don't need you anymore. Okay, I'm out of here, bro. I'm out. So if you want to give me the ball, whatever you do, all right, whatever. I'm gonna do me. And I think that's made an awkward uh chemistry. Draymond Green right now, he's a player that looks like, man, he's at the end. Kaminga was plus 15 at that point. And then they're like, oh yeah, we're the people coach likes. Yeah, yeah. No, totally. So as well, I want to get to this point by leading Lions. JB reminds me of that type of coach Mark Jackson was when it comes to development and coaching with passion and putting belief in these players. JB Bickerstaff completely does in that regard. I would say JB Bickerstaff is far better in terms of an offensive scheme, X's and O's adjustments, and then also being a guy who can navigate the politics within a front office. Though I would say that JB Bickerstaff's front office is far easier to navigate culturally than the Golden State Warriors. I've lived in the Bay for a long time. I got a chance to know the Lakers just from the outside, but I've interacted. I won't get into all of it. Is to say they're, I'm not gonna call them completely pompous, but that's the word that comes to mind. That's the word that comes to mind. I don't think anybody would describe them as down to earth. Um, they're the rich guy in the room who kind of thinks that they're above everybody. Um, and Mark Jackson just wasn't good at, you know, doing those politics. Some people genuinely like believe, like, because I have more money, that I am a better person, or everything should evolve around me, or I'm now smarter, right? Like, just because you're good at tech business over here doesn't mean you know basketball, right? Just because you have money to be able to buy a team doesn't mean you have the best wherewithal to make the decisions, right? So, like, there's things, and they make comments like we're 100 years or 10 years ahead of the NBA and everyone, all stuff like that. It is what it is. All I have to say is there's a different circumstance between JB Bickerstaff and the working with Trajan Langdon in that front office, where you still have Dwayne Casey. You still have like continuity there. You still have culture. You still have open lines of communication. Very different situation in that regard. All to say, I agree in terms of development. Joe B, like, I don't want Kaminga on the Pistons, but they gotta get that kid out of there. He's 22, and people are talking like he's cooked. Yo, I've been saying this the whole time. If you go back and watch Jonathan Kaminga at the G League Ignite, um, on that team, he's had the same exact game. How he scores, his abilities, his talent, the same freakish athleticism, the man strength, the ability to get to wherever he needed to get to. Um, sure, he had some things to round out playing without the ball in his hands. But here's the thing: when you're 6'7", 230 pounds, with a 42-inch vertical and a 7-foot wingspan, and you have natural man strength, um, yeah, you kind of get used to having the ball in your hands and the offense evolved around you. But suddenly, Kerr's like, "Hey, in my system, let me just explain it. The system's not going to fluctuate for anybody new. It revolves around Steph. It works because of Steph. And then you have a Clay, and then you have a Draymond, and then you have a bunch of fill-in role players. Kerr, for the longest, he's trying to do better. He's trying to do better. I've noticed it. I'm not gonna act like I haven't noticed it. But for the most part, he's been trying to plug and play Bogut. Okay, we don't have a Bogut anymore, so let's get a Bogut type player. We don't have Iguodala anymore, so let's get an Iguodala type player, right? Kyle Anderson or D'Anthony Melton supposed to play that Barbosa, Sean Livingston role, or he tries to replicate what has worked at one time and do it over and over again. And so when you get a new guy like a James Wiseman or a Jonathan Kuminga who has the unique talent but a super high ceiling talent, Kerr doesn't have the ability to really do that. All right. And he also doesn't always understand the mindset of superstars. He's never been that. He was a roll player. He's hit big shots, but he has always been a roll player. And I say role player. Like he's number 9 on a championship team. Maybe 8. And even then, you're like, damn, we got to depend upon Steve for major minutes. Give us your best, Steve. Knock down a couple shots, hopefully. you know. And he did knock down shots. I ain't gonna knock that. But it's to say he doesn't understand the mindset behind a Jonathan Kuminga, who's like, bro, you can never do what I do. How are you telling me to do less of what I am and telling me it doesn't have as much value in this system? You know what I mean? So that issue has been there all along. I've been watching it. I've been on the free Jonathan Kuminga bandwagon since honestly like his second season. And all that BS around he needs to learn more and do other things. It's like, man, if you're not maximizing his talent, which is incredible, like we're seeing it. He is franchise player. He can be your second best player on a championship team. If this was a young Jimmy Butler, right? If this was prime Miami Jimmy Butler for maybe 3 seasons ago, where he was the one to lead them past the Boston Celtics and the Milwaukee Bucks, right? If it was that Jimmy right now, Jonathan Kuminga could more than be his running mate and they blow through the Minnesota Timberwolves. That's how good he is. That's how good Kuminga is. And there's a chance at only 22 years old, he could evolve into the number 1 player on a championship team. So if I'm an organization like Utah who has no franchise player, it's really hard for them to get that guy. I would throw the full bag at him. I mean the full bag. But if I'm Kuminga, I don't know if I want to be in a Utah because it feels like another Golden State situation, but better coaching for sure. Better coaching for sure. And it'll be built around him. So maybe it'll be a different situation. Even if culturally it's still bland. Uh, but if I'm Brooklyn, hell yeah. Hell yeah, if I'm Brooklyn. Throw the full bag at him. Let me give you $35 million to come in here. And we go draft Dylan Harper or Jeremiah Fears or Derek Queen. All right. All of a sudden now you got you an offensive fulcrum. Now you got Cam Johnson around him and guys like that. So all to say, I think Jonathan Kuminga is out of there. He's out of there. And God bless him. God bless him. Let me see. Oh, John B. Yeah, man, my man John B. always got good statements in the chat. I'm searching for Jerry Garcia. I'm gonna get to yours too before I close out. Uh, Question: Uh, how much is even working with Steph now? So much effort to put into helping a 36-year-old Steph get open. That's 100% true. And it comes with Draymond Green and his antics. Um, and it comes with the lack of development and growth of the younger players. Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Podziemski, Moses Moody has gotten the rawest deal. Um, they completely undermined his value. Never gave him an opportunity to really show what he could do. I think he's somebody who needs to get out of there also. Um, James Wiseman, that was a terrible situation for him. All they're saying is that, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. Like at this point, Steph still can have the magic, but on less nights than what he ever used to. He is on the decline. The hamstring injury is just it's kind of like the first chink in the arm that you really see, like the obvious, like, ooh, oh, we don't recall Steph ever dealing with that. Right? He used to run miles. They used to say he used to run the most of any player in the NBA. That's what they used to say about Steph. Now they're looking at Steph and they're like, damn, like, does he even have the energy to get open? He looks exhausted. And yet, you somewhat have been all in. But here's the thing: Golden State Warriors have struggled because they thought they could do two things at once and they didn't have the coach to do it. They thought they could develop young, talented players who could be the future while also still being in win now mode. The problem was Steve Kerr was not the coach for it. And because he won a championship, they weren't able to transition away from him to a better coach like maybe Kenny Atkinson when he was there because he won that championship in not 2016 when they won the championship against the Boston Celtics a few years back. Right. So because of that, they had to keep him. And that wrecked the whole transition. Um, if they could have seen in the future, I think they would have maybe just drafted Tyrese Halliburton and maybe drafted Franz Wagner and said, "We will deal with." Appreciate 21-22. They would have said, "We'll deal with grabbing talented players with a lower ceiling because they fit an inflexible coach, and they fit the system, even if the ceiling is not the same." Because I'll say this: you put Jonathan Kaminga in Indiana right now, he's averaging 25 points a game. You put Jonathan Kaminga, this especially this Jonathan Kaminga, on almost just about any other team. Put him on the Clippers, you put him on the Knicks, the Nets, Celtics. Well, not the I mean, because you got overlap. But let's just say just about any other team gives Kaminga the opportunity to be great, not to be a part of the team, not telling him to fit in. They give him the opportunity to be great. That's how talented he is. So the effort that the Warriors are putting into keeping this old regime together, um, is just it's just old. Fans here in the Bay Area, we know what it is. We watch it. We're just like, okay, all right, giving it the old go again, and let's see if we can find the magic. Let's see if they can do it. Um, how about putting him on the Pistons? Team Savant. That is man. The answer is no. The answer is no. The reason why is because there's too much overlap. There's too much a redundancy in Jonathan Kaminga and Asar Thompson in terms of the athletic hybrid forward wing, um, who's best getting downhill with the ball in their hands. Neither of them shoots that well enough, even though Kaminga has improved his catch and shoot 3-point shooting. Um, benefit of being with the Warriors and the greatest shooter of all time is Stephen Curry. All this to say is there's too much redundancy there, and there's redundancy between Kaminga and Jaden Ivey. And so bringing in that type of a player, you also have to ask yourself, well, who are you getting rid of? Who's going out? Is he worth Asar Thompson? Is he worth the Jaden Ivey? And I don't think so. I don't think so. I love the chemistry of this team. I'm not messing with the chemistry of this team for anybody at this point. And if you watch my videos, been following the Pistons tough for the past 2 years. Um, I love this core. Troy Weaver, uh, paid the price. Paid for the Pistons' sins. Essentially, he took being crucified up there so this team could have life. So this team could be exactly where they are. He brought those guys in, even if he whiffed on other guys. He brought in this core, and they deserve a chance to grow. So I would not bring Jonathan Kaminga. No, he is not a four. He is forced to play the four because of the roster construction. He's a three who can play up four. In other words, he's a perimeter oriented guy who's able to guard power forwards and even score on the interior. He's extremely versatile. He's kind of almost like Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi could play the four, but he's a three, right? That's who Jonathan Kaminga is. Um, let me see. Man, keep up the great work, bro. I appreciate it. You become my favorite basketball analyst for Pistons Breakdown. I appreciate that. The love. I appreciate the community that we are developing on my channel. Real talk. I think y'all are dope. I love your comments. I feel like I'm at the barbershop and we just talking shit. I love it. I love it. I do gotta hop off because it's late as hell. And I'm on the West Coast. All right. I'm a little older. I gotta get my sleep. You feel me? But I am gonna do some more content around the Pistons. Um, I did this video about the trade, recapping it because I got asked to from somebody who commented a lot on the videos that I was doing before. And so I try to have that type of relationship with y'all. If you guys really want a video on something, I'm gonna try to make sure that I, do that content because I respect y'all. Y'all give me your time and your energy. I give you my time and energy. We all in this together. All right. With that, it's your man 100 Grand Ross with the Rock Never Stops. If you enjoyed the video, smash the like button for me. Hit subscribe and the bell for notification. And remember, when you hit like, it tells the algorithm you want to be aware when I'm doing my lives again because they're interactive. Not too many folks do these interactive chats. They kind of do their own thing, don't always listen to the people in the chat. I got love for the chat. I'm here to chop it up with y'all. So smash the like button for me, hit subscribe and the bell for notifications. We'll get at y'all next time. Peace.